I'm so glad that you're here today joining me for this topic. My name is Chris Hawkins, and I'm the Parent Education Coordinator with Teen Health Connection. Today, we're talking about winning your teen's cooperation from resistance to buy-in. Not by controlling teens, but by understanding how influence works inside parenting relationships. If parenting a teen feels hard sometimes, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're parenting a teen. This stage can be heartwarming and exhausting all at the same time. My goal today is for you to leave with a few clear ideas and some real life language you can use, especially in tense moments, so you're not trying to figure out the right thing to say when emotions run high. When I say cooperation, I want to be clear about what I mean and what I don't mean. Cooperation doesn't mean a teen who happily agrees with everything. That's just not realistic, and it's not the goal. What we mean is when teens feel respected and understood, cooperation becomes more likely. That happens when parents collaborate with their teens, inviting input, listening to their perspective, and compromising on what's negotiable. And here's the key: collaboration doesn't mean giving up authority. It means sharing power appropriately so teens have some voice, which increases their buy-in. When parents rely primarily on control and ordering teens around, resistance and rebellion usually increase. Because this is a webinar, we're going to keep participation simple and low pressure. You don't need to unmute. You don't need to share personal details. I'll just invite you to use emoji reactions from time to time just to stay connected. So here's our emoji key. Thumbs up means yes or that resonates. The eyes mean I've seen this before. The light bulb means that's helpful. The face exhaling means that feels hard or real. And the heart means I love that or that really landed. And here's my promise to you: I'm not going to overwhelm you with dozens of strategies. We're going to focus on a few core ideas that actually make a difference in real life. Small shifts that you can repeat, because consistency is what creates change. Before we go any further, I want to set the tone for how we're approaching the conversation today. Parenting teens can bring up a lot: frustration, worry, second guessing, and sometimes reactions we didn't expect from ourselves. And when parents feel blamed or judged by others or by themselves, it becomes really hard to learn anything new. So we're not doing blame and shame today. We're doing support and strategy. Most parents care deeply about their teens and are doing the best they can with what they have. A lot of strategies we reach for under stress are based on what we were shown, not because we're doing something wrong. This session isn't about pointing fingers. It's about understanding why certain patterns show up during adolescence, why some approaches stop working, and what we can do differently in ways that actually protect our relationship with our teen. If you've ever walked away from a tough moment thinking that didn't come out how I wanted it to, you're in the right place. And if you're here because you want things to feel calmer, more connected, or less like a daily power struggle, go ahead and give me a thumbs up reaction. Let's zoom out for a minute because cooperation isn't really about winning the argument of the day. It's about the long-term development of your team. When we focus on cooperation, we're building trust and communication over time. And trust is what makes the bigger conversations possible later. The conversations around safety, mental health, relationships, substances, social media, decision making, all of it. And cooperation reduces conflict, not because teens stop pushing back. Pushing back is part of adolescence. It's because parents have a way to respond that doesn't automatically escalate into a power struggle. Now, here's the part that often gets missed. Cooperation encourages responsibility because it moves us away from external control and toward internal accountability. When a teen is only focused on avoiding punishment or earning rewards, the motivation stays outside of them. But when we invite partnership with our teen, input, problem solving, and repair, teens start practicing. This is my role. My choices affect trust. I can rebuild trust. And that's how accountability grows from the inside. And those experiences build lifelong skills, problem solving, communication, and learning how to navigate disagreements in healthy ways, not just at home, but in friendships, in the school setting, and even future relationships. If you've tried yelling, lecturing, or repeating yourself and realized those things didn't lead to positive change or a stronger relationship, give me the exhausted face or that face exhaling reaction. Those strategies exhausted me too. The problem for me was I wasn't taught alternatives to these behaviors. The way I was parented was my reference point, and that was from a control-based perspective instead of the idea of mutual respect and collaboration. These are strategies that work with adolescent development. And that's why the next section matters. To understand teen reactions, including the blank stare reaction, we have to talk about what's happening in the teen brain. Let's look at what brain development can explain and how a good understanding of teen brain development can help us do things differently. So we're going to talk about teen brain development just enough to make the behavior make sense and to make the next steps feel doable at home. A lot of what parents experience as defiance is often a developing brain under stress. That doesn't excuse disrespect, but it helps us stop taking everything personally and start responding strategically. Understanding this helped me stop seeing certain behaviors as intentional disrespect and start responding with more curiosity. On this slide, I want you to think about two brain systems that are constantly interacting. First is the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, judgment, impulse control, and thinking ahead. Any higher level thinking is done in the prefrontal cortex. It's the part that helps you pause and say, let me think before I respond. It slows reactions down so a person can make a thoughtful choice instead of an impulsive one. So when people say teens don't always have breaks, what they really mean is this: when stress is high, they don't always have access to their thinking brain. That's the part that helps them pause, reflect, and make thoughtful decisions. The other system involved is the emotional alarm system. That's the limbic system, especially the amygdala. This part of the brain reacts fast. Think of it like a smoke alarm. Its job is to protect us, and it's a very important part of the brain. Thousands of years ago, this system helped our ancestors survive real life-threatening danger. If a predator showed up, you didn't stop to think, you reacted. The challenge today is that this same alarm system still goes off even when the situation isn't actually dangerous. It can activate for things like being late for work or failing an algebra test. You might hear this referred to as the fight, flight, or freeze response. And when this alarm system is running the show, access to the thinking brain is blocked, which is why reactions can feel so intense. They can feel really fast and hard to control. During adolescence, the prefrontal cortex is still developing, while the emotional and reward system is highly active. So teens can have big feelings, fast reactions, and a harder time pausing under stress. They're also more sensitive to tone, whether something feels fair or not, and whether they feel respected or not. That's why sometimes you'll see what looks like overreaction or shutdown with your teen. It's not that they can't understand what you're saying. It's that in a stressed moment, the alarm system can drown out the thinking system. If this helps you make a little more sense of your teen's reactions, give me a light bulb reaction. And now here's the key. Stress doesn't only affect teen brains, it affects adult brains too. And that changes what we do next. So knowing this is imperative. Before we move into what to do differently, I want to name something that helps parents feel less blamed and more empowered. Under stress, all brains get more reactive. Stress blocks access to the thinking part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, and stress activates our alarm system, the amygdala. So when your teen is stressed, their alarm system is activated, and without access to their thinking brain, it's difficult to deactivate that alarm. But here's what's important. When you, the adult, is stressed, your thinking brain is blocked too, just like your teen. So your alarm system is activated too. This is why we find ourselves in the middle of power struggles, screaming matches, or lectures. But here's the hopeful part, and this is the teaching opportunity. Unlike our teen, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. That means with tools and practice, we can learn to bring that prefrontal cortex back online even when we're stressed. That's why we, the parents, are responsible for the integrity of the relationship with our teen, because it's easier for us to access our thinking brain than it is for our teen to. That doesn't mean we're perfect. It means we lead. We regulate first, we repair when we miss it, and we model what we want our teens to learn. So let's talk about what that looks like in real time. What actually helps bring the thinking brain back online for everyone? So here's what we do with that brain science. First, when the alarm system is activated, long lectures don't land. Not because we're wrong, but because the thinking brain isn't fully online. That's why this bullet is so true. Short, specific directions work better than long lectures. Second, calm is contagious. Co-regulation before problem solving. That means before you try to teach the lesson, you help the nervous system settle, yours and theirs. Lower your voice, slow down, take a breath, pause the conversation if needed. You're not giving in. You're creating the conditions where learning is even possible. This took practice for me. Calm didn't always come naturally, but it changed the entire tone of our interactions. And believe me, I didn't do it perfectly every time. But when we do it differently even once, that changes and it helps us practice and be more likely to do it differently the next time. Third, clear boundaries and calm repetition build safety and trust. This is where parents sometimes get stuck because calm repetition feels like it shouldn't be necessary. But repetition is part of development. And when the boundary is steady and the tone is calm, you're protecting the relationship while holding expectations. And finally, aim for guidance and scaffolding, not winning the moment. Because the long game here is helping your teen build the skills their brain are still developing. And your steadiness is what helps them get there. Now that we understand what stress does to the brain, we can talk about the parenting shift that helps the most, moving from control to influence. When teens push back, many of us instinctively try to control the situation. Control sounds like threats, lectures, or power struggles, saying, because I said so, or do it or else. Control can sometimes create short-term compliance, but long-term, it often damages trust, increases secrecy, and can make teens dig in even harder. Influence is different. Influence is built through relationship, respect, clear boundaries, and consistency. Influence says, I'm the adult, I'll hold the boundary, and I'm going to do it in a way that protects our connection. If you've ever tried control and watched it backfire, drop the eyes reaction for me. All right, we're going to make influence really concrete with a few scripts that you can borrow. Influence becomes practical when you know what to say. So I'm going to give you a few scripts because when you're in the moment, it helps to have a script ready, something that you've practiced so many times that it sounds natural. So script one is just this. I can't make you blank, but I can blank. For example, I can't make you do your homework, but I can limit screens until it's done. Or I can't make you clean your room, but I can decide when rides, friends, or privileges happen until you do pick it up. So that's one that we can easily remember. I can't make you blank, but I can blank. Script 2 is curiosity. You might say, help me understand what happened from your perspective. Curiosity lowers your teen's defensiveness. It doesn't mean that you agree with them. It means you're gathering information before you respond. And then script 3 is collaboration. This is where parents move from deciding for their teen to problem solving with their teen while still holding the boundary. When you say, what feels fair and what helps rebuild trust, you're doing a few important things at once. First, you're making it clear that repair matters. Something didn't go well, and the goal isn't punishment. The goal is rebuilding trust. Second, you're inviting your teen into the solution. That doesn't mean they get to decide everything. It means that they have a voice in how trust is rebuilt. Collaboration sounds like, I'm still responsible for the boundary, but I want your input on what comes next. And when teens are part of the plan, they're more likely to buy in because responsibility starts to shift from something being done to them to something they can own. Now, if one of these scripts feels usable to you, give me a light bulb reaction. Influence works best when it's paired with the parenting approach that research consistently supports. There are a lot of opinions about parenting, but research is pretty consistent on one thing. Teens do best with what's called authoritative parenting. Warm plus firm. Warm plus firm isn't being a pushover, and it's not being a dictator either. It's being a steady leader who stays connected and holds boundaries, but does so lovingly. So let's break down what warm plus firm actually looks like. Warmth means your teen experiences you as emotionally safe. They recognize that you listen, you validate their feelings, you show interest in them, and you show them that connection matters. Firmness means you hold boundaries. You follow through. You're predictable. You don't move the line every day, depending on your mood. Now, when warmth is missing, firmness can feel like control, and teens often rebel. When firmness is missing, warmth can turn into chaos, and teens don't feel secure. Warm plus firm says, I care about you, and I'm still going to lead. Now, if you've ever joined me on a webinar, you'll know that I will tell you that I'm a recovering permissive parent. So being firm and holding those boundaries wasn't always easy for me. If you've ever noticed yourself swinging between too strict and too flexible, depending on your stress level, give me a thumbs up reaction. One of the easiest ways to put warm plus firm into practice is involving teens in rules and consequences. One of the biggest cooperation boosters with teens is collaboration, especially when it comes to rules. And collaboration doesn't mean giving up your authority. It means using your authority in a way that builds their buy-in instead of resistance. Here's the shift. When teens feel like rules are simply done to them, they're more likely to push back or shut down. But when teens have a voice, even a small one, they're more likely to engage and take ownership. So start by being honest. Parents can say, I respect that you're growing up and becoming more responsible. That's why it's so important to collaborate with you on rules and consequences whenever possible. Rules about health and safety are non-negotiable. Everything else is negotiable. And we want you to know we value your input. Including you in this important process is imperative as we move forward in a mutually respectful relationship. And then we move to logical consequences. Logical consequences are connected to the behavior and focused on rebuilding trust, not on making a teen suffer. For example, if curfew is broken, a logical consequence might be an earlier curfew next weekend or more check-ins throughout the week. If a phone is misused, a logical consequence might be limited access for a period of time. One piece that really helps this work is accountability on both sides. When you and your teen agree on expectations or consequences, it can be helpful to actually write them down. That doesn't have to be formal or fancy. It might be a shared note on your phone, a whiteboard in the kitchen, or a quick written agreement. Documenting what you've agreed on, gives everyone something to come back to. It reduces arguments about what was said, reinforces shared responsibility, and models real-world decision-making, the kind your teen will need as they get older. It's also important to build in regular check-ins, not because something went wrong, but because growth changes things. A rule that made sense 6 months ago might need adjusting, and reviewing it together shows your teen that flexibility and accountability can exist at the same time. And here's the balance piece. Collaboration doesn't mean giving up your authority as a parent. You're still the adult. You still hold the boundary. But instead of controlling every detail, you're allowing your teen appropriate autonomy within clear limits. That balance, firm expectations paired with choice and input, is what helps teens practice negotiation, self-regulation, and problem solving while they're still in a supported environment. You're not stepping back. A good way to look at it as is you're coaching forward. And let's talk just briefly about discipline versus punishment, because there is a difference. Punishment is about control. You messed up, so you pay. Discipline, on the other hand, is about teaching. You messed up, so we learn. That doesn't mean there aren't consequences. It means the consequence is connected to the lesson, not just the mistake. Discipline asks, what skill does my teen need here? Is it time management, honesty, respectful communication? problem solving. A discipline approach sounds like, okay, this didn't go well. What happened? What's the plan next time? And what needs to change until trust is rebuilt? Now let's move into the moment by moment communication tools. What to do when emotions run high. This is where the rubber meets the road. You can know all the right things, all the right ideas, and then when your teen rolls their eyes or slams a door and suddenly your brain goes blank. That's not because you don't know what to do. It's because your nervous system is activated. And when emotions run high, access to our best parenting tools runs low. So in this section, we're focusing on what to do in the heat of the moment, how to de-escalate, how to ask questions that lower your teen's defensiveness, and how to keep your influence without getting pulled into a power struggle. So here's a quick preview of what we'll cover. These are the tools that we're going to practice, not to control your teen, but to help you stay regulated and effective when emotions run high. None of these are about having the perfect response. They're about slowing things down, lowering defensiveness, and keeping the relationship intact, even when the behavior needs to be addressed. The goal isn't to win the moment. The goal is to maintain influence. We'll focus on tools that help you pause instead of react, respond instead of escalate, and communicate in ways that keep the door open rather than shutting it. So let's start with the first tool. First, de-escalation, how to keep conflict from blowing up. Second, curious questions, how to invite conversation instead of defensiveness. Third, replacing lectures with conversations, because teens shut down when they feel talked at. And fourth, repair, because what matters most isn't avoiding conflict. It's how we come back together after conflict. Now, before we move on, we're going to just take, well, we're just going to pause and reset. My little timer isn't working, but we're going to take one slow breath in through the nose, and we're going to exhale out through our mouth. That gives us the ability to pause and reset. And this is a great technique to use anytime you feel yourself spiraling. Now, if this is helpful, drop a thumbs up reaction. Remember, though, that slow breathing tells our nervous system that we're safe. And when our bodies feel calmer, learning and communication gets easier. So the first tool we mentioned is de-escalation, because no communication strategy works when emotions are running high. When your teen is escalated, raised voice, shut down body language, eye rolling, door slamming, their thinking brain is offline. And when we're triggered, ours often is too. So the goal in these moments isn't to teach a lesson or solve the problem. The goal is to lower the emotional intensity first. Now, de-escalation starts with us, the parents. not because we're responsible for our teens' emotions, but because we're the one with the most developed nervous system in the room. This might look like taking a breath before responding, just like we did on the previous slide, lowering your voice instead of raising it, or choosing to pause the conversation instead of pushing through it. Sometimes the most regulating thing you can say is something simple like, I can see this is a lot right now. We're both too heated to talk productively. Let's take a break and come back to this. I want to talk about it, just not like this. De-escalation isn't giving in. It's not ignoring the behavior, and it's not losing authority. It's choosing timing over intensity, so the conversation can actually be effective. Once emotions come down, then we can move into problem solving, accountability, and teaching. But if we skip this step, everything that follows is a lot harder. Once emotions have come down, the next tool is curious questions. Curiosity is powerful because it can really work to lower your teens' defense mechanisms. When teens feel interrogated or judged, they tend to shut down. When they feel that you're genuinely curious about what's going on with them, they're much more likely to stay engaged. Curious questions aren't about catching your teen in a lie or forcing a confession. They're about understanding what's underneath their behavior. Now, this might sound like, help me understand what's going on for you, or what felt hard about this? What do you think got in the way? Or what do you think would help next time? The goal isn't to ask questions until you get the answer that you want. The goal is to invite reflection, because reflection builds responsibility. And one important reminder, tone matters more than the words. A curious question asked with sarcasm or frustration will land like criticism. The same question asked calmly can open the door to problem solving. Curiosity keeps you in a position of influence. It communicates, I really do care about your perspective, and we still need to figure this out together. Once you're having a conversation instead of a standoff, the next step is moving away from lectures and toward real dialogue. The third tool is replacing lectures with conversations. Most of us lecture because we care. We want our teens to understand the risk, learn the lesson, and make better choices next time. The problem is when teens feel talked at, they stop listening. Lectures tend to increase resistance, not responsibility. Conversations, on the other hand, keep teens engaged. They communicate respect, and respect is what keeps you in a position of influence. A conversation sounds less like a speech and more like shared problem solving. It includes listening, reflecting back what you hear, and inviting your teen into the solution. This might sound like, what's your take on what happened? What do you think needs to change? How can we handle this differently next time? When teens are invited into the conversation, they're more likely to take ownership. not because they're being forced to, but because they feel respected and involved. This doesn't mean you give up boundaries. It means you move from controlling the outcome to guiding the process. And even with all of these tools, we're still going to mess up sometimes. Which is why the final tool is repair. The fourth and final tool is repair. Even with all of these tools, conflict is still going to happen. We're still going to raise our voices sometimes, say things that we wish we'd said differently, or miss the moment. What matters most isn't avoiding conflict. It's how we come back together after it. Repair is powerful because it restores emotional safety. It shows your team that relationships can withstand hard moments and that accountability doesn't disappear just because you're the parent. Repair doesn't require a perfect apology or a long conversation. Often, it's very simple, but honest. It might sound something like, I didn't handle that well. I raised my voice and that wasn't okay. I still need to hold the boundary, but I want to repair how that conversation went. Repair isn't about taking back limits or excusing behavior. It's about naming the impact of what happened and reconnecting. When parents model repair, teens learn that mistakes are part of relationships and that taking responsibility is how trust is rebuilt. These tools work together: de-escalation, curiosity, conversation, and repair. They work together to help you keep your influence even during hard moments. Cooperation isn't built in one conversation. It's built in repeated moments, in how we respond over and over again. This next section is about skill building for teens and for parents. We're focusing on building competence, responsibility, and the ability to repair relationships after conflict. Let's start with competence. So this slide is about the long game. Navigating challenges builds competence. Teens build confidence by doing hard things, not by getting everything right, but by trying, struggling, and learning along the way. And this is where it can get tricky for us as parents. Rescuing blocks their skill building. When we step in too quickly to fix, solve, or smooth things over, the message our teen receives, even unintentionally, is, you can't handle this without me. What helps more than fixing is guidance. Guidance beats fixing. Staying close, asking questions, and helping them think through the next steps builds competence without taking over. This doesn't mean we disappear or let teens flounder, sink, or swim. It means we support without rescuing. So they get to experience, I can do hard things and I can learn from my mistakes. Anytime learning is happening, mistakes are part of the process for teens and for parents. Skill building isn't clean or linear. There will be moments that don't go the way we hoped. And remember, that's why repair is such an essential part of cooperation. So conflict is normal in every relationship, especially between parents and teens. Strong relationships aren't defined by the absence of conflict. They're defined by what happens after. So I'm stressing this again because repetition is a good thing and mistakes are inevitable. We're going to raise our voices sometimes. We're going to engage in a power struggle. That's just human. But repair starts with owning our mistakes, going back and saying, I lost my cool. I want to say I'm sorry. Remember, it doesn't weaken your authority, it builds trust. And when we repair, we're modeling accountability and emotional maturity. And we're showing our teens that strong people take responsibility for their behavior. Repair also means reconnecting, reminding your teen that even after a hard moment, that your relationship is still solid. And when repair happens consistently over time, it does something really powerful. It strengthens relationships. It builds resilience. It teaches teens that relationships can recover. Mistakes don't ruin relationships. What damages relationships is when repair never happens. And the good news is repair is a skill, and skills can be practiced. Now, if you've ever worried that a mistake damaged your relationship with your teen, go ahead and give me that heart reaction. You don't need to change everything at once. Small shifts practiced consistently create meaningful change over time. And this connects directly to what we just talked about. Repair isn't about being perfect, it's about coming back. So if you try one thing this week and just pick one, not all four, just one, maybe you'll pause before reacting. Even 5 seconds helps. Maybe you'll ask one curious question instead of lecturing. Maybe you'll repair after a conflict with a simple apology. Remember, consistency is what's important. Consistency matters more than perfection. Your teen doesn't need you to get it right every time. They just need you to show up, to be present, and willing to come back when things don't go as planned. One small change is enough to start shifting the tone of your relationship. Now, if you want to try one thing this week, go ahead and give me a thumbs up reaction. And we're going to wrap up with the big idea that brings everything together. I want to zoom out one last time and connect everything that we've talked about today. When we talk about influence, we're really talking about the long game of parenting, remember. Influence isn't built through control or fear, it's built through connection, through warmth, clear boundaries, and consistency over time. And the way that influence grows isn't through big changes or perfect responses. It grows through small daily interaction shifts. How we pause, how we listen, how we repair, and how we come back. Progress doesn't come from changing everything at once. It comes from repetition, from focusing on one or two things and practicing them over time. All of this is really about relationship investment. When you invest in the relationship today through connection, through repair and consistency, you're building a foundation that supports your teen, not just now, but into their future. And that's what lasting influence looks like. And with that in mind, let's move into our final slide and close together. I want to leave you with this one core idea. You can't control your teen, but you can influence them. And influence is what lasts. Influence isn't built through fear or force. It's built through relationship, through connection, consistency, and repair. It grows over time in the everyday moments where you take a breath, where you stay curious, where you have a conversation with them. You hold boundaries and come back when things don't go as planned. The goal, remember, isn't to eliminate conflict. It's to handle conflict in a way that protects trust and keeps the relationship intact. You don't have to have all this figured out. Parenting teens is hard, even when you're doing it really well. Support's available. Teen Health Connection is always here. I'm here to support you. And just remember, you don't have to parent alone. I just want to thank you for showing up today. And thank you for caring enough about your teen to show up for a class like this. To me, the fact that you show up shows me you're doing an amazing job. Thank you again for being willing to keep building connection with your teen, even when it's hard. And I just want to invite you to stay connected with Teen Health Connection. There is a link here to our website. I have a link built in if you click there to subscribe to our newsletter. Please follow us on social media. And I would ask one quick favor. It's definitely voluntary, but I'm just dropping a super short survey. If you just click there, the link will take you to the survey, and your feedback really does help us make these workshops better for families. You'll also notice a parent pledge included at the bottom of the survey. And even though we didn't talk maybe directly about substance use today, these conversations are such an important part of keeping our teens safe. When we strengthen communication and win their cooperation, it makes all tough conversations, including those about substances, so much clearer. So there's also a link on our website for your teen to take the teen pledge. And I think sometimes it's really meaningful for parents to do that together with their teen. And it's a great conversation starter into those more difficult conversations if you're finding it hard to start. Thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to our next training together.